Hey, we are live. Happy New Year's, everyone. How is everyone doing tonight?
Happy New Year. Pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Been busy, but fun.
We're kicking off
You know
the
what,
new
Father?
year.
In my head, you were asking that of like our commenters, and I'm like, I need to be quiet so they can respond.
I wasn't sure, but Starfleet
their
Boy
responses.
Yeah, Starfleet Boy jumped in with his condition, so I thought, okay, I guess I need to do this, or I'll be weird, and everyone will think I'm a dork or nerd or something.
We don't want that.
Yeah, people never think that about any of us.
No.
Doing a live stream talking about Star Trek
here.
On New Year's Day.
I'll say this. I'll say Brian Swift does Brian Swift cooler than most people I know do themselves. You know, he knows what he does, and he does it well.
Oh, thank you. You are the best father I've ever met as well.
But
I've seen better.
We are here to start off the new year with a hashtag TQIF, your must see YouTube lineup. If you watch us on YouTube, if you don't, that's okay. But you should check us out all night. We're doing a deep but fun dive into this week's episode of Star Trek Discovery, and then on Starfleet Boys channel, we'll have some late night fun and festivities over there to I guess usher in the new year. If you're not partied out already. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get this thing going. We already have several people watching us, so that's good. We'll just kick things off. I'm Fathery.
This is Starfleet Boy.
This is Brian.
This is Dave.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
Dave,
welcome
we had to do that
back.
Acapella.
What acapella? What are you talking about?
We had to do that last week acapella because you couldn't make the video go.
Oh yeah, we had technical problems last week, but let's leave that in the past. It's a new year.
Yes.
Yeah, you missed it, Dave.
Everything will go
I didn't
perfect.
get to watch
today.
the whole podcast, so I watched y'all's opening statements to see who I agreed with and who I hated.
Yeah, Dave doesn't do well when people have different opinions than him.
It's true.
I
y'all
was like that.
are all my enemies now.
Oh wow!
Well, no, let's talk about this week, this new episode.
Do it.
And let me just kick off our introduction. Welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 130th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we talk all about Star Trek all the time. And tonight we are here not just to talk about Star Trek Discovery Season 3, Episode 12, There Is a Tide, but this is also the 800th episode, if you count the movies and shorts also, of Star Trek. This is the 800th release, or 800. Well, I guess that's not true because they didn't really release The Cage. Well, they kind of did, like years later. It's the 800th production
Star Trek.
Of Star Trek.
800th
Yeah.
Star Trek.
It's a Star Trek number 800. If it was a comic
There you
book.
go.
Pretty awesome.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
Very nice.
Here's to the long road to 900, and then eventually 1,000, which I think we will actually hit 1,000 in like 5 to 10 years. I'm predicting.
I mean, they're moving forward pretty quickly, and
Yeah.
lots of projects are afoot.
Yeah, I expect us to hit 1,000 by the time we get to the 2030s. So, however you feel about this decade, it will be a standout era for Star Trek.
I would like to be a very old man and perhaps slip into the next big adventure on the 1701st. Star Trek.
I guess. Yes. It would have to, like, all of Star Trek would have to like double and then some. between now and then, but it is possible.
Do you think when they get to episode 1000, they'll be like, "Oh gosh, I wish they weren't. All the shows weren't set in the 32nd century. Now it's so played out."
I don't know. I don't think that'll be the case. But we'll find out when we get there. But in the meantime,
let's put down my money on that right now. So let's just somebody keep that in mind.
Let's talk about this episode that we got here. It was written by Kenneth Lin and directed by everyone's favorite director, according to Will Wheaton. Every show loves him the most. Director Jonathan Frakes.
He's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to summarize the episode real quickly by reading the official synopsis, and then I'll kind of expand on it with spoilers. But the synopsis that I pulled off of Memory Alpha reads, after capturing the USS Discovery, Osyraa seeks a meeting with Admiral Vance, while Burnham and the crew must overcome unimaginable odds as they attempt to regain command of their ship. I think that's actually spoilery itself. I'm glad I didn't see that before watching the episode. But yeah, Osyraa basically comes to Admiral Vance. She breaks her way into Starfleet HQ to just be like, I want to talk. I want to sign this armistice. I want there to be peace between the Emerald Chain and the Federation. But those peace talks don't go through because she refuses to take accountability for her war crimes. While that's going on, Michael Burnham has a Die Hard-esque adventure on the Disco, which is under command of the Emerald Chain. She is able to rescue Paul Stamets from the chain and actually remove him from the ship against his will because he wants to go rescue his family that are still in the Verubin Nebula. And Tilly and the bridge crew also escape and prepare to recapture the ship with the aid of the sphere data, which seems to be emerging as the personality Zora that we know from Calypso. In the form
that Fathery has to love.
In the form of like some cute little R2-D2 droids that don't really belong in this franchise, but it is what it is.
And they are not going anywhere now.
Yeah. Actually, the dot 23s don't bother me nearly as much as the dot 7s. I didn't like that existing in the 23rd century. And like when we've seen so many Star Trek stories, we're like, it would have been really easy if we just had like a robot to go on like the outside of the ship to do that, or things like that. It's like it just always felt out of place. But here in the 32nd century, I do not mind, really.
Fair enough.
They even had the division colors in their
eyes.
I noticed that.
Yeah.
Well, we should each give an opening statement and just kind of express our broad feelings and reaction to this episode. I'll go ahead and go first, and then we'll just pass the mic around until we all get our statement out there. But I had a really good time with this one. I kind of never know if Discovery is going to make me like cranky or make me like happy and excited. I'm happy and excited this week. I know I've had like a lot of complaints over the season, but there's been multiple episodes that I flat out loved, and this is one of them. I think Osyraa, who I've had some criticisms of, is a better written character in this episode. Still not great, but good. I like them kind of fleshing her out, making her a bit more complex and a little bit more of an interesting baddie. It's trivial, but there's so much little like dotting the I's and crossing the T's with like little details that my Trek trivia brain loves to fixate on, and they can actually like be distracting. So I like that like they got like a lot of that stuff right in this episode, which was always a plus. And I love seeing Star Trek so directly and blatantly like go after capitalism as the enemy, as the bad guy. It does this a lot. Star Trek has done it a lot if you pay attention. It does it often, but not always. So I love it when it does.
They use the word capitalism in this episode. That does not happen too often.
That was not that. I took note of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And my biggest thing that I wanted from this season is for it to tell a story with like a clear vision that wraps up strong in the end and doesn't drop the ball in the finale. So right now I'm riding high. I'm really on board with what they're doing. Like this is some of like the most I've ever been engaged with the show and the entire history of Star Trek Discovery. It's really gonna break me if they crush me next week and just like do a bad ending to the season. It's gonna hurt. It's hard for me like not to have high expectations when I want to love this so much. So that's the position I'm in, where I'm in a very good mood, but also kind of terrified.
So next week will either be a celebration or a pity party.
Oh, it'll be a wake.
Yeah, I'll either be like just giddy and smiling and bouncing in my chair, all happy and bright eyed to talk about it, or I'll be like on like a really grumpy rant. So tune in next week and find out. Starfleet Boy, what do you got? What's your opening statement?
I really agree with you about all the fun I'm having, especially in the last few episodes. Just it's been building up to this this moment, and I definitely can nitpick about things, but overall I'm just really enjoying it. I was surprised and pleasantly I was confused and surprised of Osira's move. I really thought it was going to be a pew pew, come in guns blazing, disable the Federation security subterfuge. So I really love that they did this whole story of showing the vulnerability of the Emerald Chain, and I agree also that I wish this kind of was written in hinted or perhaps shown a little bit more in previous episodes. I've heard that from some of my other friends, and I agree with that. But overall, I look at Star Trek as a show. All the new Star Trek series, Picard, Lower Decks, even, and this show as a show that is probably written to be binged, but it's released week by week, so it's very frustrating. But if you watch it again later on as a more whole work, I think everything just balances itself out, and that's what it feels like it's doing. And so we'll see what happens next week as well.
Cool. Brian, what do you got?
I guess I thought about, I don't know if there's there's some kind of goalposts thrown around about capitalism bad, and I suppose by implication socialism good, though they stopped short of throwing that word out there. But there didn't seem to be a lot of deep subtextual stuff that I could, at least not that I can assess with only this snapshot. Maybe when we see the next episode, it'll tell a more complete story about the human condition. But that said, this was a hell of a ride. This was exciting from moment one. Even the sit around the table and talk scenes were exciting. This was very thrilling, very exciting, and not just dumb action. It actually had my brain working, and that's a good idea. That's a good, you could actually think about it a bit, and it would mostly hold together pretty well, which is unusual for science fiction, space opera in general. But and this was exciting. There was great character moments. Everyone got a little moment and beat to look cool or look evil or whatever. Maybe there wasn't there's some sort of how much compromise and who do you get in bed with to bring about galactic peace and stuff going on, I suppose. But it didn't seem to have a lot of much more to say about the human condition in detail than that. It was far more involved in all of its plot and character stuff, but that's fine. They did a real good job. I guess I'm wondering, do we know if the next episode is just a standard length episode? It's not like a 2-hour finale or anything weird like that?
I don't think they would do something 2 hours. It might be a little over an hour.
Okay, I'm just
close to an
they've
hour.
got to wrap up all of these plot lines that we saw in this week's episode, plus all the stuff with Saru and Culber and whatever the
Adira?
Sukal, yes, and Sukal, and get everyone back to a safe place, presumably, if they're going to end the season on something that isn't a big cliffhanger. And maybe they are going to end it on a big cliffhanger. I don't know, but there's a lot of stuff that needs resolving in 45 minutes or so of 50 minutes of next week, and it's going to be tricky to get all that in a satisfying way that doesn't feel like too much Deus Ex Machina. That said, this is easily the best season of Discovery so far. I didn't have a single episode so far that I disliked. So even if the final episode is bad, this is still going to be one of my favorite seasons of Star Trek, just because everything else was great. I loved every episode was above average by the standards of Star Trek, in my opinion. So maybe not wildly above average, but at least equal to or above average. So this has been a great season, and I'd love them to stick the landing. But if they die in a gloriously badly written episode, it will still be a hell of a ride. So.
It's very like Klingon attitude. You're all about going down into ball of flame.
Yeah. Today is a good way to write like a hack. So,
I was not on last week, but I wasn't in love with last week's episode. In fact, I kind of disliked it. I think I have the opposite of whatever Brian has, where you enjoy the dreamscapes that represent our internal life. And Mindscape. I'm not super into that. And what sort of explanations they began to give for the burn did not sound good to me. So I did something I actually rarely do. At the end of it, I was kind of so disappointed. I decided to go ahead and watch the next time, or the preview of the next episode, and I was like, shit, it's just going to be a bunch of shooting. This is going to remind me of the ending of season 2, which had a for me pretty lackluster battle sequence that I wasn't really invested in. And then I really liked the episode when I watched it, and it was not at all what I was expecting. And so at most every turn it sort of surprised me with something I liked. I think I'm trying to think. Did the preview, did they give any hint at all that Osyraa was going to be attempting to negotiate?
No,
I don't watch those. Starfleet, when you watch them,
those who did.
I watched them, and I also have a correction for one of your Gornegs, but I can't tell you until we watch next week's episode because it's something that was revealed in the preview for next week's episode.
Oh my god,
you got something wrong in the Gornegs last week.
Yeah, we'll look forward to that being brought up next week.
I don't honestly. I remember watching the trailer. For some reason, when I watch it on my TV, I don't get the trailers, but if I watch it on my computer, I do get the trailers, so I don't know what's up with that.
It's weird, yeah. It does that for me too, Brian. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know what it is. I will say though that CBS's tech support is really great. I was having an issue that it was global, like a lot of people were having, where when you put your Bluetooth headphones on, it had like a weird message that would come across. So I screenshot that and sent it. And they wrote back and said, we fixed it. Like, as if I was the only person. I don't know. It's like so weird. And
I should check.
They're like, an influencer out there is talking.
I was not that impressed. I was actually just recently, it stopped playing on my desktop computer, and I can't get it to work no matter what browser I use and what apps I disable. And I contacted them, and they eventually said, well, we'll email you eventually. And I haven't heard anything since then. So if I want to watch it on my computer, I have to rely on couriers like Book to help me out.
I think they're retooling all of it for Paramount Plus, which is launching soon, like this year. We can say that now. It's coming out this year, soon this year, like maybe in the next couple of months.
Yeah.
So we'll see if that. Maybe
they're not just going to change the opening logo. This is an actual, like, everything's different.
I think there's going to be a lot of things that they rebuild for it. Kind of like when HBO went to HBO Max, but we'll see. But yeah, we'll just go ahead and kind of.
Hey, I wasn't done. Y'all interrupted me.
Oh, sorry.
I was talking about technical issues. No, what I wanted to say is the thing that I liked about the episode wasn't just sort of a general surprise thing, but that the sort of, at least the chatty centerpiece of it, the discussion between Vance and Osyraa, was that sort of more substantive stuff that I've always been wanting more of from Discovery, to kind of grapple with something a little bit and talk it through a little bit more next gen style. The question of there was something of an actual discussion of ideas here. Can this peace be achieved? What concessions are people willing to make? Is it worth the peace if Osyraa doesn't have to pay for her crimes? And also they introduced an interestingly some morally ambiguous characters, like her. Who was the guy who was played by? He's an actor who played the Klingon, I guess, in early season.
Oh,
The
Kenneth
wheelchair-bound
Mitchell.
actor.
Kenneth Mitchell.
Kenneth Mitchell, yeah. His character,
Yeah, he's great.
I thought was interesting. It was a little abrupt to suddenly have nuance added to Osyraa, and I think I would have preferred it that they had engaged with it much more of the season in other ways. But I was happy to see it, and then I also I always like a good take back the ship kind of storyline. So I was enjoying all the Die Hard. You're going to need some new FBI guys. You're going to need some new regulator stuff.
Yeah.
And then I thought it actually ended on a cool little cliffhanger, like a kind of a cool bit. Cute robots aside.
Father, can I answer this question after?
What's that?
Answer what
Can
question?
I answer that question?
Oh,
From Edic
yeah.
Warrior in the chat. Yeah, we have a live
I got
question
so
from
excited
Edic Warrior.
because I just wanted to say this. Father's milkshake brings all of the boys to the yard.
Yeah, I'm not a big cocktail guy. Edic Warrior. I'm not like a big cocktail mixer. I normally just stick to like beer in a can. Not even like good beer, like beer that has commercials during football games. But tonight, for whatever reason, I am actually mixing dairy and alcohol, which I normally
That's really
don't
gross.
do. But yeah, it's a
Yeah,
Irish.
actually, no.
Irish coffee milkshake. It's just like Jameson and some iced coffee and some Bluebell Dutch chocolate ice cream.
Hard
Actually,
cow
not
juice.
gross. That's not gross.
It actually mixed together extremely well, and I'm enjoying it much more than I expected. It's a nice little
The
sweet
Irish coffee is the
chocolatey
exception.
coffee
I
drink.
forgot about that. And I guess a White Russian. is all right.
Yeah.
That has milk in it.
Yeah, it can be done. It's done frequently, but I just normally don't cross those streams. Dave, are you good now?
I am. Let's move on to specific-y things.
Okay. Well, sorry for.
I do want to say I was
cutting you off
surprised
earlier.
Yeah, sorry, Dave. I did it to you twice. But I do want to say also that I was surprised by your reaction. I totally, from the way you were like teasing at the beginning, I thought you were gonna say you hated this.
I was
episode,
trying to build drama.
That was good.
I knew
It was very effective.
I knew Dave was going to dislike last week's episode, and I thought he would like this one.
Yeah.
He was
With
trying
these-
to
a lot
pull
of
an
these,
Osyraa.
a lot of these multiple episode arcs. I like my philosophy. I like here we have basically a 3-part season finale. So I do try to like kind of hold judgment until the end, especially if there's things I dislike. I'm like, well, maybe I'll like it better by the time they get to the end of it. But that's my advice with this type of stuff. But I don't know. Maybe the end will break my heart. We'll find out.
I still think stuff needs to stand out at least well enough on its own that it's entertaining, even if we should always at least be open to the possibility that stuff will get recontextualized by later outings.
Yes, because context is for kings. Was an evil man from an evil universe told us one time.
I heard the butcher's knife cares not for the lamb's whining or something.
Lamb's cry. That one too. No, that's season
I wish
one.
it
That's,
was called
that's
that.
930 years ago. We gotta move on. Yeah, I don't know why people are disliking, but I don't know. It helps. The algorithms help. So if you want to dislike this video on YouTube, please go for it. Because
People are
it's still an
disliking.
engagement. Yeah.
I want to know who you are. I'm coming for you. I have a certain set of skills.
What you should do if you're disliking this video is go dislike every single video on the Tex-Trek YouTube channel.
Oh my
Give me
God.
all those engagements. Please do that. I'm serious.
It was, Father, it was when you said that you were laughing at the superior intellect. And they're like, oh, impulse power.
Well, we got to move on. We got a whole episode to talk about.
Yeah, let's do it.
We're going to start at the beginning with the Discovery approaching Starfleet headquarters and the trick that they're doing of having the Emerald Chain ship, the Viridian, pretend to be attacking the Discovery. They have complete control of the ship. They're locking down the computer, but there's some crazy little part of the hard drive that's like about like old Earth media that they can't seem to like get control of. It just seems to be operating independently. Little Chekhov's gun there for some sphere data, but yeah, Vance at the HQ, he is concerned. He's like, oh, why won't they respond to hailing frequencies? I guess they're being blocked or whatever. So Osyraa knows that Vance is not going to let them just like crash into that force field, that he will let them in. We also have the entire bridge crew is captured and stuck in the ready room. And Rin the Andorian is there. Zara from episode 2 is there with his frostbitten hand from the parasitic ice, mocking acting Captain Tilly. And Book and Burnham make their way through a very dangerous transwarp corridor. They show up just in time as the Discovery is about to enter the HQ. They lock down Grudge safe and securely so no one's worried about them as they prepare their ship for ramming speed and very dramatically crash into the Discovery shuttle bay. So what did y'all think about like this opening sequence?
I just want to quick say I appreciate that they assured we cat fans that Grudge is stowed away and safe.
I was pleased about that too.
Yeah, it was nice to see that either Book or Michael is in fact a big fan of The Mandalorian, given their or not Booker back. Osyraa is a big fan of The Mandalorian. Given how her little trap unfolds. So I was like, oh, very nice.
Even though thinking of the timeline, this episode was probably written before that one was.
Yes, but it's the 32nd century. Clearly, in universe, it has to go the other way around.
Yeah, that's not a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
I actually, what was the? I don't want to go off on get into the Mandalorian, but what was the general episode that had where that plot sort of thing happened?
They used that Lambda shuttle to crash the Imperial ship,
being chased by Boba Fett's ship. To get inside.
Anyway, it was a kind of a cool little plan, aided and abetted with getting shot up by her own ship and all that stuff.
Yeah, I also I really loved that Admiral Vance Lance or Vance? What can't I remember his name right
Vance.
now? Yeah, Vance. Okay, I really like him. I've enjoyed him all season, and I keep getting annoyed with people who are like, "Oh, I think he's going to turn out to be bad." And it's just like, no, you've just seen too many
people.
You've seen too many Star Trek stories where where Starfleet is sinister, and I'm so glad that they're not in this case. And I think it's really confirmed here when it's like, well, Osyraa knows he's not going to let them crash into there, and he does, open the force fields. It is that little bit of mentality of using the good guys morals kind of against them.
He's very shrewd for much of the episode. He figures out that it's Osyraa later on. He's up up to her cat and mouse sort of negotiations. Yeah. But yeah, he does have his sort of, Federation weakness, naivete, whatever, however it would be assessed by their enemies. He does have that.
Yeah. I thought I liked it overall, though. I thought it was odd that he wasn't sticking to General Order 12 a little more tightly. From Star Trek 2, when you encounter a ship and you cannot open communications, you should go to yellow alert, raise the shields, assume there's possibly a deranged genetic augment from the 1990s running the ship.
That sounds like 24th century policy or 23rd century.
They do have red alert. They're in condition red.
I know, but the point is they're worried about Osiraa's big ship and not so much about Discovery. And I was just thinking, Saavik needs to jump in and start quoting General Order 12. Where's Saavik when you need her? So,
I know Lieutenant Saavik.
Yeah, but yeah, it was fine. I'm just kind of more of pointing out there was a chance to put in a really good Easter egg, and they didn't take it. There.
What was a couple people in our comments asked, and I wasn't sure if I had actually missed some little throwaway explanation, but is there any particular reason why the shuttle bay thing to Disco was open? Do they not have
because it's always open. It's been open since the ship was first seen in the 3rd episode of the show.
They don't have some kind of hard defense screen or something like that up.
If they do, they never close it. They have never closed it.
They've closed it a couple times. It's been
there's a few VFX shots where from a distance it looks like it's closed, but there's never been a close up of it. You've never seen it open or close.
Oh yeah,
and the toy has it closed. A little shield area over that though would. would maybe be a good idea.
Well, I'm guessing between the Velocity Book ship is going and all of Book's fancy super tech, it probably punched through most type of shields. Also, my headcanon is that they were running Discovery with very low shields, so she looked almost like she couldn't possibly survive against Osiris' ship for another minute. You've got to let us in or we're all going to die, kind of thing, which of course backfired because that allowed Book to get inside. If
he was also given an RFID when they made Book an official shuttle that allowed it to pass through the shields too.
That
just
might
as
be
a headcanon, another headcanon thing we could throw in there.
I have a question though about that stuff about like Book and Burnham's journey through the Transwarp corridor. Is there's a bunch of ship debris in there. One of them is a cool Gorn egg. If you stay till the end of the show, I'll disclose that. But it's so full of debris. Are these ships ships that were in Transwarp at the time of the burn? Do you think they might have been blown up during that?
That's what I reckoned.
My other question is in that Voyager episode, Dragon's Tooth, I think it's called, where they introduced that race that were like the very clear Cardassian knockoffs because Deep Space Nine had just ended, and they, I guess they wanted to have like Cardassian type villains on Voyager, so they invented the Vardwar, or however you say it. They set them up to be like this big thing, but they only use them in one episode. They had subspace corridors that were full of debris. So now I'm thinking like is subspace and transwarp the same thing?
Well, subspace is used to create a warp field, so transwarp is always going to be tied to subspace on some sort of level. But I did like the idea that these conduits are breaking. I mean, we see the Borg have to have these special gateways and systems to maintain their conduits, or they fall into disrepair or collapse. And here we see that in this 32nd century, the corridors are not being well maintained, and they become incredibly dangerous. And apparently, you can only take very small ships through them; otherwise, you'll smash into all the other ships that have been destroyed either because of the burn or just because the conduit has become so dangerous that other ships went through and didn't make it to the other end. But I like that idea. I thought that's a wonderful, cool new mechanic to add to the Star Trek universe. If I was ever it gives you the option to get from one place to the other really quickly, but also at extreme danger, which is always
it's like trying to drive a highway in a zombie apocalypse. Dead cars everywhere.
Yeah. So it both gives them a storytelling mechanic, but also is self-limiting to the point where it doesn't unbalance things and make things too easy for people.
Yeah. I have a follow-up question to that. There's stuff like in those transwarp corridors that's just like floating there. Does that mean you can slow down to a crawl and like if you wanted to while you're still in the transwarp tunnel,
or you're like carried by a current?
Yeah,
Slipstring. So wouldn't all those things be moving around? And
for story purposes, I would like to think that you can do it, but it's often going to cause catastrophic problems. But at some point, would be cool to go in there and find some survivors as part of a storyline.
There might be a thing that once you stop, you can't get going again. Maybe, I don't know.
That might be
spitballing.
Yeah, I want to see some ghost ships of the Transwarp.
Yeah, finding a ship trapped in there with a crew or something would be fun. That you need to rescue.
One real quick shout out to the audience. I noticed Don Paris is here, and he was saying that the Discovery, when it got there's a word in myth or in stories for what a ship when it becomes like imbued with a soul is called. So Dom, if you could put that word back in the comments, I'd love to know what it was. I can't remember right now.
All right. I did have one. I realized that this point where I realized we're not watching Doctor Who, we're watching Star Trek, because if Book was chasing them down and the Discovery's about the Commandeer Discovery is about to slip into the Starfleet HQ safety bubble, and it was a Doctor Who story, Book would have rearranged the parts of his ship to spell out the word trap out there in space so that Admiral Vance would would look out and just, Book's ship showed up and it's forming into a word. It says trap. And I thought That would have been, I was like, that's awesome. Why didn't they do that? Because this is Star Trek and not Doctor Who. So instead, we recreate the greatest Star Trek movie ever, Star Trek 5.
I thought
boom,
of that too.
in we go.
Actually, it's
You
my
know, on
first
that
attempt.
on that note, since
Yeah.
everyone knows Morse code, couldn't you just Morse code Klabautermann? That's it. That's the word.
Yeah.
That's an awesome word.
That's from
Yeah,
like German naval or nautical superstition. Like if you're
Yeah.
good sailors, and you maintain your ship well, then like the spirit of that ship will take care of you when you're out at sea. I believe.
And that's what the Discovery seems to be becoming
With Osyraa actually like becoming
Yeah,
a
with Zora.
character. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yep.
Well, anything else, or shall we move on?
Just the Star Trek 5 homage, and then on that note, since everyone knows Morse code, you could just phaser blast Morse code onto the shields, saying it's a trap, or send a message that way. And I'm
Well,
surprised
by
no
the
one thought
time
about
Vance
that.
figures out that's going on, it's probably too late. It needs to be quick. They've got
It's true.
seconds.
That's
They
good.
should clearly just always have some like real simple automated drones looking for Morse code everywhere. It's really handy.
As long
The
as you
Morse
set
code
that up in
detectors.
advance, that's fine. But you have to check off gun. So
Well, the Discovery does make its way into the HQ, and Osyraa has her scientist buddy, her little friend, played by Kenneth Mitchell, in Invigilator. Irelia, I think. I'm not really used to that word, Invigilator. But yeah, he's an Invigilator. They keep saying that, like, oh, the Invigilator is working. Like that's like a
I didn't
thing I'm
even
supposed
catch
to know or
that,
something.
and now I can't stop laughing at that word. I'm sorry. I'm
Oh,
so
I missed
immature.
it. Like, is this supposed to be like it invigorates him, but it's a regulates too?
I
It's an
googled what it means.
Invigulator.
I googled what it means. It's like someone who like issues an exam.
Oh.
And then I saw like ads for like, do you want a job? Do you want a career as an Invigilator?
Ah, okay.
Wow.
But anyways, she has Invigilator Aurelio working with Stamets to try to learn more about the spare drive and figure out a way to mass produce this. That is her ultimate goal. And this is where we get to see like a little bit of like vulnerability and humanity with Osyraa during her conversation with Aurelio. Also, why that's going on, Book and Burnham in the shuttle bay come up with like their plan. He treats her for radiation. So, okay, they took care to bring that up. We don't have to worry about her radiation poisoning anymore. He gives her a concealment device because she knows the ship better and she's more likely to successfully get to Stamets. And this is where Burnham says, I love you for the first time. And Book is like, oh, it's not the first time you talk in your sleep. And they have this cool little sweet moment and they kiss. And then to be the party poopers, Zara and his regulators come in. They capture Book, take him to the ready room with the bridge crew characters. While that's going on, Admiral Vance. Sorry.
I love that you keep calling him Lance.
I don't know why my brain is broken today, but I love that here he figures out like, oh wait, it is a trap, and he has like the ships surround the Discovery. Osyraa gives him a holographic message though, and is like, hey, look, like I know I came here under false pretense, but I just want to talk. Can I please like come aboard and just talk to you? And he has to say yes to that. So what do we think about like these developments?
I was baffled as to why Osyraa decides that in the middle of this big operation in the heart of enemy territory, that's when we should start futzing with the spore drive. I would think you'd want Stamets, with his hands in the goo, ready to go in case this whole thing goes tits up. We're boom out of there. And that struck me as odd that would be the time. And maybe when we learn more of Osyraa's plan, it will make more sense that she had to get started on this immediately. But it sounds like everything it seems like he's doing with Stamets feels like something that could have been done tomorrow or the next day, and it wouldn't have been that big of a deal.
There's a later scene, Brian, where Osiris basically says, I'm going to give the Discovery back, of course. I just needed leverage. But I think so she was taking advantage of the time that she thought she might have had to extract the secret of the spore drive.
So you think she was really going, even if she hadn't figured out the secret of spore drive, she still would have handed Paul and the Discovery back?
I think she might have wanted that option. She might have wanted that option as a bargaining chip to give them the ship back.
All right. Well, she does say she's playing a very dangerous gamble. Even she admits that this is a crazy ass plan and it could go badly. So.
I really like that moment where she does seem to have this type of friendship with him, and like this kind of makes you believe her sincerity later when she's like, I honestly do want peace. Because
are these the first times that we've actually seen real vulnerability from her? I feel like there was always bravado previous.
Yes,
she likes this guy more than she liked her nephew.
This is basically the only moments we've ever seen with Osyraa is when she kills her nephew for being a failure, and to teach the audience oh no, she's like a big baddie. She's really willing to kill her own nephew, and then the way that she'll talk to Saru or Tilly during their confrontations on the view screen.
And she's like a mother to this person too, because he was a child when they first petition for her to save him, basically, right? And so she sends him off to so that shows that Orions live a long time and can still look pretty young.
I mean, he says he was 10 and he looks like he's in his 30s or 40s. I can believe she's in her 50s.
I can even believe late 20s for him. By the way, shout out to Ken Mitchell, who's great.
Kenneth Mitchell. I think I looked it up. He's actually 46 or 47, I believe.
Oh, right on.
But I mean, actors all look younger than they are.
It's the 32nd century. Everybody who has resources probably lives a ridiculous amount of time.
Star Trek Discovery definitely has in its format. It likes to do. It has season-wide mysteries and things like that. And I think they clearly wanted her humanity to be a reveal, and I do think that kind of sucks. It's kind of not great for showcasing character depth when you have to do when it's a surprise reveal that a character has depth. Now, I liked it a lot. I'm glad they did it, but it is such a weird choice to kind of have that as a reveal.
It's with a twist,
but now we'll never unknow it.
So not only that, there is a twist though. I mean, she still inherently has the wrong perspective, if you will, because the way she goes about things, even though she does have compassion and caring for Irelia, this character, and maybe shows it for others, the vast majority of her actions show that she's actually a psychopath.
Stamets has a fantastic line later on when he says, "I believe you that she's more than what she appears to be, but she is also exactly what she appears to be."
Yeah, that's actually great. That is
she's definitely more, but she's still that part. So
I will be curious, Father. You mentioned that now we'll know that. I'll be curious to revisit. I don't think they were really hinting at it in any way, shape, or form, but we will at least know what's kind of going on in her head, and that she has to presumably have that bravado to tame the hinterlands that she has.
Yeah. I do. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, with the reveal of her actually having some depth and humanity, they did a similar trick in season 1 of Picard with Narissa when we get probably the best moment with Narissa, that scene of her over her Aunt Ramda's hospital bed. And she's talking about her concern for her aunt who took her in, the reason why she's so dedicated this cause of their weird anti-AI stuff.
What is it with modern Trek and its surprise reveals that women are humans?
Well, evil women.
That evil
and neither one of them were human. One was a Romulan, one's an Orion.
I was being pithy. You knew what I meant.
Yes.
Anyway, but I liked that. I liked that scene with Narissa too, but it was too little, too late for that character.
Yeah. Probably the only scene. That was the only Narissa scene that you liked, Dave. Am I right?
Yeah. And I haven't much cared for Osyraa either. I thought she was a little bit of a flat villain, just not evil enough to be truly memorable. Only kind of evil in the way they would describe the actions of the Emerald Chain. So this was very welcome for me, and I thought the actress did a good job of really selling me on it in this episode, and they gave her a lot of time to do it with. So the episode gave her many more opportunities than the actress who played Narissa had. Yeah. Again, I think it's a weird structure. I still liked that I'm glad that they did it though.
Yeah, better late than never.
Yeah.
Them doing it did make me want. I really hope she doesn't go kabloom next week. I do hope that this is a character we can get more development from.
Could she become the
in
gold
future
Ducat of Discovery? Like
I would
know
not
if I
mind
see
that.
that.
I mean,
but-
I see that potential for sure.
I certainly feel like they've, I don't want this to just become, the Federation is back and everything's great. I would like to see them kind of challenge themselves.
Yeah.
A little more DS9 in there.
One thing I'm still wrapping my head around, if we assume she's legit about this proposal to Admiral Vance, which all the arrows seem to be pointing fairly solidly in that
The
direction.
lie detector said it's
Yeah.
true.
I mean, why even bother with the lie detector if you're not
I feel
going?
like there is something more with that like
Yeah.
weird questions about who they based it on. But
Yeah.
yeah, what would finish your thought, Brian?
Yeah. Coming in using this subterfuge and basically holding all these hostages right there in front of Starfleet HQ seems like a very odd way to go about it. I totally get her seizing Discovery because she wants the spore drive but using that, she could have, once she found out the coordinate of the base, she could have just spore jumped there and popped up on the screen and said, all right, I've got Discovery, but we need to meet. All this dog and pony show about shooting and smuggling, tricking them to letting the ship inside. What did that accomplish?
What else would get leverage?
But you could sit outside the bubble and you have just as much leverage. You still can kill the Discovery crew. And if anything,
she also wants to turn some of them over. So I don't know. I thought it worked. I thought it was most dramatically satisfying. And I think it makes sense in the universe.
I guess it seems to me like she's basically pissing off Admiral Vance as much as possible and then coming to the negotiating table and asking him to trust her. And that felt really weird.
I almost think that it's sort of at least on a dramatic level, I think sort of makes sense in the sense that she knows her reputation. And so for her to kind of come in there and sort of do I could have opened fire, I could have started executing, but instead I'm coming to the table, is a sort of very showy, dramatic way of saying I'm sincere. That I don't know if that at least the way she thinks, she might not think that they would buy any other way. That she has to show that she's the badass they think she is.
I mean, she seems pretty sharp about how Starfleet does things in this episode and previous ones, and seems to be really on the ball about who Starfleet is and how to deal with them. I suppose some of this could just be propaganda tools for later when she goes back to the rest of the Emerald Chain leadership. She says, yeah, I tricked him in there and I busted and I had a gun right to the Admiral's head and it was all me. They were at my mercy. It's a lot easier to bragging rights than I flew up in a shuttle and said, could you let me in, please? That's hard to spin that.
You pull up Stress-Free K's comment there, that last comment. Osyraa doesn't really understand how normal, non-sociopathic people think.
Does she though? She seems really sharp about predicting and figuring out how things are going to unfold up till now. That's one of the only character trait she had really was that she was very clever.
I think the fact that she does capture the ship and come this close to coming into the HQ and possibly positioning herself to do more damage to Starfleet. I think it's very much like a power move to do all that and then back away from it. Be like, okay, I'm gonna start turning them over. I just want to show you okay, I can give you a big bloody nose right now, but I'm not, because I want you to know you can trust me, you can talk to me, you can negotiate with me.
And I think part of that is what I was saying was, yeah, she's a person who lives by big dramatic flourishing moves. You give us this, we'll give give you the pesticides on that, on Book's planet. She's not a quiet negotiator person, and I think she knows that reputation. And she revealed, she wanted some of some drama, honestly, I guess.
I believe it's called cowboy diplomacy.
That's pretty cowboy.
Yeah.
That's more like bandit diplomacy.
Let's move along. And
I had one other question.
Okay.
Why didn't Book just replicate more of those little armbands? Why does he only?
Why don't you just replicate more dilithium?
I mean, dilithium is supposed to be a special substance. Is this armband built out of some magic substance? Is that what?
Yeah,
there's
a little bit of dilithium in there, and it transports your.
I suppose that would work. I guess. It seemed useful enough that I would have bummed some dilithium off Michael just to have a few more of these around.
Concealment device. Yeah, it's not even like he got it from a quote unquote tosser who was trying to like
that's what he did.
rob from Helm.
Tosser.
But let's talk about the Burnham stuff though. We'll do all of the Burnham sneaky diehard stuff, and then we'll move on to the bridge crew and to Stamets and the Osyraa Admiral meeting. Yeah, there's this dude, one of the regulators on the Discovery, who's trying to he's trying to steal the badges off of their little memorial wall that they made to, I guess, all the people who died in season 2. And I liked this confrontation between Burnham and this guy where you think it's just gonna be like an easy takedown. Our main character who knows Vulcan martial arts is just gonna like knock this guy out. But no, like she pays a price for it. She gets stabbed in the leg. A little Bruce Willis and Die Hard having to like run around with bloody bare feet in a moment. But she's on her quest to get to Stamets. She's crawling around in the Jeffries tube like Bruce Willis and the ductwork in the building in Die Hard. She tries to patch herself up, and Zara's regulators find the guy knocked out, and they corner her in the Jeffries tube. She's able to initiate a fire to get the fire suppression system to vent the Jeffries tube into space and suck the regulators out. And so she's able to escape from that. And then she has like the cool action hero moment where she tells Zara, like, looks like you're going to need some more regulators. So what do we think of like a diehard Michael Burnham here?
Did we think
have a phaser rifle?
Yeah. Did we go too far into the diehard? I mean, we leaned into that like so hard that anybody who's seen that movie is going to think of it, and to the point where seems fairly deliberate. Are we okay with that in our Star Trek?
I mean, Star Trek's done Die Hard multiple times before. Like,
well, yeah, but I mean, taking it to the point where yes, but they took it to the point where she's literally running around in bare feet. That's a whole nother level of referencing a very specific film in a very specific
Brian, it's
way.
going to make for some cool and fun cosplay one day. The bloodied barefoot Burnham running around.
Yes,
I love this stuff though, because I liked that Michael had to struggle so much to just get from the shuttle bay to engineering was like a life and death struggle. Yeah. And people always accuse her of being a Mary Sue, but like when she gets like stabbed in the thigh and has to like fight through that and still knock the guy out, but like struggle hard and it doesn't just come easy. I'm like, no, like Mary who? Like, no, like this is just like a competent, strong character.
I think your concern is fair, Brian. That's a very specific thing for them to homage, and it's in many ways a very un-Trek like.
Yeah, I wouldn't even bring it up if they hadn't done the bare feet. If the bare feet hadn't shown up, I just would have said whatever. It's a bit diehardish.
I think I thought it was like so cool that I didn't care.
Yeah. I mean, Die Hard's 35 years old, so maybe it's okay to rip it off now because it's that old.
But also, it was kind of an homage to Star Trek 3, right? When she's kicking her opponent
I thought of
in
that.
the face, and she's like, she should have just said, "I have had enough of you." I would have not minded at all. Like,
at least it wouldn't have been Die Hard. Would have got me thinking about some other movie that was more appropriate.
Dom pointed out about the badges. I forgot they were valuable, that you could trade them on the mercantile market.
They were trading all kinds of badges there. Yeah, they love Starfleet badges.
Yes, everyone in the future is a Star Trek.
We don't
fan.
need no stinking badges.
It's a cool little character moment. It reminds you, like the regulators, how like their greed and
why didn't Michael just pinch the guy that eventually ended up stabbing her because she did not pinch him? Because there's a moment where he's face down and she leaps on him and wraps her legs around his neck. That is much more complicated than Pinch.
Do they have some kind of armor?
Yeah, I thought he had like a thing that might have. Yeah, see there, and there's like this thing. Maybe that's preventing the
Sure.
He does have like this big collar around his
and
neck.
maybe they
I
deal enough
retract.
with Vulcans that's the purpose for that, and maybe that like
Okay, fair enough. I retract the complaint.
Put on your,
Also, like, her
empty
Vulcan neck
collar.
pinches aren't great. Like when she did it to Giorgio and to Stamets, they're both like awake again like a few minutes later.
She wouldn't have gotten stabbed in the leg. Let's be clear. If she pinched him. But it does look like there is some neck armor now that I can see the slideshow Fathery is helpfully providing.
yeah, it's very cool.
I also thought, I've always imagined that all these funny panels in starship corridors have like emergency spacesuits and engineering kits and fire extinguishers and medical kits hidden behind them. And the Next Generation Tech Manual says that is in fact the case, as does Mr. Scott's Guide to the Enterprise, a less canonical source, to be sure. And so I was very disappointed that Michael could not find a medical kit to save her, save her uniform.
You know how they have that little wrist gadget that like can generate? Well, no, she didn't have one of those. She stole the phaser from the regulator, right? Or does she have a Starfleet?
No, it's a Starfleet phaser she's got.
Okay.
The new Starfleet phaser.
Yeah, that little like wrist thing that like generates your phaser that they have. Yeah. Like you would think those could also like produce a dermal regenerator.
And I would,
I was thinking that although, the thing she was wearing is meant to hide her, but it's not going to stop the ship from registering that you're like taking out a med kit or something like that, right?
Well, she had that regulator comm badge.
Yeah.
Or I guess it's a tri-comm badge because it pulls up the holographic interface. So that's how Zara was able to figure out where she was, because she was using that to listen to where Stamets was.
Well, I suspect the security locks on the Jeffries tubes are more advanced than the security locks on the medical kits. As far as whether or not, I can't open that or they'll know where I am. So.
I can tell the 32nd century comm badges and the wrist things are going to be a little bit like cell phones, where like when writers are going to need characters to not have assets too easily, they're going to have to write weird things. There's interference. The programmable matter can't work in the nebula and stuff like that. I expect we'll see a lot of those kind of things in the future.
Yeah, and like, it's annoying how like every horror movie from the last 20 years they have to explain why people like aren't just like on their phones like calling for help.
True. I also had the question, why did she take the regulator's badge when she knew she was basically attaching a homing beacon to herself?
Well, at first she was using it to transport, but they have a transporter scrambler, but she was using it to listen to their communications to find out where they were holding Stamets. And she also uses it to like call her mom that might pay off next week if the co-op Malat like show up to help out or something.
Well,
this was also kind of done desperately and on the fly, right? She didn't like have time to plan this, right?
Yeah, but picking up a homing beacon when you went to the trouble of getting your little wrist arm thing that makes you invisible to sensors seems like an odd choice. And if she's trying to listen in, then why, when they're starting to do an overview of the status of the whole ship, she hangs up on it and uses it to call mom instead of listening in? I was like, that message could have had some really important stuff, and she just flips it off and calls mom in the middle of it. So listening in is not a big priority for her.
Well, she needs to set up the mom's Deus Ex Machina appearance with Vulcan ships next week.
And that's interesting. If you can call mom, why not call Admiral Vance? Surely that would be more useful, and a variety of different things I could say about that, but it's pretty obvious. If you can call mom, why not call Vance? I didn't quite get that. I'm guessing we're going to get a bunch of Vulcan ships who save the day next week, but
Vulcan Romulan hybrid ships.
Yeah, I think she called her mom because she thought it was like a mission where she was not going to come back from. That was my interpretation at the time of watching, but you're absolutely right.
The way that she phrases it is kind of like that. And it was interesting, like this character who in season 2, who they very much establish as like very like secular minded person who doesn't really like think much of religion or like hold like much value with that stuff. I guess has like gone and seen like so much like weird stuff and like dead parents coming back that she like tells her mom like, maybe we could still meet in some far future. Hell, maybe dad will be there.
She's realized she's in a TV show and nobody's ever really gone.
And anything can happen.
Yeah.
Anything else about Die Hard Burnham? Sneaky
It was
stuff?
great fun to watch. It was well executed, even if it felt a little tropey. It was well done.
I love these Jeffries tube sets.
Yeah, they look cool.
We haven't seen these before.
There's a bit of color to them, which kind of is surprising. They could have been kind of bleh.
It's not all like blue and silver like everything else in Discovery. Like you actually see like a little bit of like yellow and blue and red in the piping.
Oh yeah, you're right.
These reminded me more of the TOS era, ironically. Jeffries tubes in a way.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, we can move on to I think what was some of the meatiest stuff in the episode, the Osyraa negotiations with Admiral Vance. When she beams aboard the headquarters and goes into the ready room with Vance, and they have the Dr. Eli hologram there as the lie detector with a face. Osyraa basically says, like, every empire has fallen. Why would ours be any different? I really need to talk peace with you. I basically want to have my science resources mass produce the spore drive, but we need the branding of the Federation. We need like that trustworthy, like good brand of the Federation. They have the Admiral has a little conversation with her about shit and apples that we can get into in more detail. But she busts out this armistice, and she tells them, you can read this whole thing, you can sign it, and I think he might have been stalling because he knows something's going on the Discovery at this point. They find one of the regulators floating in space, but yeah, he reads through the armistice, and he's like, "This actually is not bad. I really want peace with you, but you can't be the figurehead. Someone else has to be in charge." She says, "Yeah, of course. I'm not going to be like the puppet master." That's when Eli's like, "Oh, she's lying about that," and he's like, "You know what, Osyraa? Like, you're actually going to have to like face responsibility for what you've done. Like be the hero your people need. Like, fall on your sword, take one for the team, do this, and we can establish peace for both of our societies." But she's like, "No, fuck you. That's not good enough," and storms off. So what do we think about this negotiation?
I thought it was I guess the goon squad that she brought was just more of that posturing thing that
personal security. Like,
but they're all waiting out in the other room. If Vance wants to shoot her, he just pulls out a gun and shoots her.
I know, but he doesn't bring his security team into that room either.
Yeah, so why bother with the goon squad if they're not going to contribute anything?
She's a showy bad guy.
Yeah, okay. It's just the same showiness that I have to hijack a ship and break into your place before we can have a conversation. So, okay. I was just wondering if there was something I missed.
He even gets it like, Blackbeard the pirate put long burning matches in his beard and did crazy dramatic stuff in real life. I'm like, I think sometimes people there is bravado and showmanship to leadership, and I think that's a big part of how she leads.
You tell me like y'all don't do that. Y'all don't like show up with like a posse and like before you walk in, like you talk to you're like, okay, like I'm gonna go in and like all of y'all like come in behind me and like don't
What
say
do you think
anything.
Tex-Trek is? What do you think Tex-Trek is, Father?
Well, only when I'm filming a fan film.
She would look weak if she just like showed up by herself. Instead she has like this posse of like these guys in like the gimp masks. Fucking they look like master gear. Yeah, they look like they can do some damage.
Yeah.
Do we trust Eli's capabilities as presented? Do we trust that he can tell the truth?
He was in the episode. We saw him in that previous episode, right?
Yeah, the seed episode that I didn't like.
Yeah, he's a little bow tie man. But she asked some questions about him and, the human face. And there was a little bit of sense of like her critiquing sort of a human or anthropocentrism or, however you'd call it, human centrism on him. It seemed like Vance was hiding some little thing, though. Has that been touched on before? Like, is there some reason to think there's a plot point to come with this guy, or is he just?
I didn't think so. I didn't think
Well,
so.
My assumption was his plot point is to show the audience that she's sincere, so that we can move on and not have the audience spending all episode and all week wondering if she was telling the truth or not. We can just say, no, we have a piece of technology that says she's telling the truth. We used it. That's how this works. So now you can move on to worrying about other things in the story.
And it didn't feel like magic. It didn't feel like magic plot convenience because they set this up earlier in the season.
Yeah. No, I guess.
No, at some point she asked some question about him, and it just seemed like Vance, instead of just giving her an answer, kind of did a kind of like move on thing.
I think you're imagining this like the disappearing crewman in the corridor.
That scene was weird.
Yeah, the question did set up some of the philosophical differences. Vance is about ideas, and she's about practicalities, and so and physical, and much more tactile physicalities.
Right.
So for her, for her, she's like, why don't you have it look like somebody trustworthy that everyone knows is, Abraham Lincoln or something? And and for him, he's like, no, he's all about the ideas of these things and doesn't need to have these more concrete, visceral, physical symbols of stuff. And I thought that's what I took that exchange to be about, was setting up a little bit of their different ways of looking at life or the universe and everything.
Dave, I was also suspicious of Vance earlier in the season, and I had some of those same observations, because he does these weird kind of expressions. I realize now it's just he's overstressed. He's just very stressed out. He's a very stressed out person, and I think that's what those
it's just kind of that's like his exhaustion talking, his kind of
he wakes up in the morning and he sees 84 clusterfuck dumpster fires on his desk, and he's like, okay, I might be able to address 5 of these. We might be able to actually successfully help 2 of them.
Yeah,
he's like, that's.
He's got there's a little counter at the bottom of the screen on his desk showing number of people who died, because we couldn't help them, clicking up all the time.
Yeah. Speaking of dumpster fires, I feel like although I don't know how much of it was intended, I feel like it might have been in the back of their head. This conversation certainly seems to at least reflect the question of post-Trump presidency prosecution. And I like when they can do that without making it a really heavy-handed allegory and that's
not going to happen. That's not going to happen in real life. That's more fantasy than anything that's going to be in this TV show.
Yeah.
But you take the point though, right, Fathery, that this was probably intended to at least reflect it.
I don't know. This was written over a year ago, so I'm not sure.
I mean, it may just broadly, that oftentimes when you do sort of stories about ideas, they can apply to anything. But there is a question of if if this would be better for most of the people in the galaxy, would it be, is it hubristic to not forgive? Essentially, I mean, clearly war crimes.
Well, I mean. I had some questions about what exactly is Vance wanting here. They never put Emperor Giorgio. Right? Emperor Giorgio was never put on trial. There was never a question of them locking her up for her crimes.
Because Giorgio's not trying to install a puppet into leading this new joint Federation Emerald Chain society.
Well, but he's not just saying he's not just saying, Vance isn't just saying you can't be in charge if we do this. Vance is saying you might need to go to jail for us to do this. That's a whole other level of
I think
not being in power.
He also tells her I will, make sure everyone remembers that you're doing this in a self-sacrificial way. We will remember that, when trying you.
So I just want to say that Giorgio can't be tried legally for crimes she committed in another universe.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
Although I do think that
in the 32nd century, they probably have laws that cover that.
Good point.
They've been through the temporal wars.
Yeah,
good point. I do think that Giorgio probably should have been tried for crimes, but at the very least, Vance inherited that pre-existing acceptance of her, and it wasn't on his placed on his feet to decide.
She got a Section 31 pardon.
Yeah. Yeah, we looked it up. So, but and what is Vance wanting? Because the Federation isn't gonna. Does the Federation throw people in jail, or do they have some sort? I was under the impression they had some sort of psychological rehabilitation program.
We joked about this, but she'd probably the most would happen is that exactly like a rehabilitation, and then how.
But she would lose her authority. She would not be. She would not be in control. You know, like that's his concern. Is like he's like, you know, like given your history, how could? And he says that when he's like, we use the past as the light to shine on the future and, you know, decide what to do. Well, that was like very cool, like Starfleet morals and stuff. And yeah, like he doesn't want her to be, you know, running the show if they do like this.
And I get that, but he focuses on this trial thing rather than just her not being in power and bringing it back to Trump.
I think if
not in power, whether or not he goes to jail or not is a separate question.
I don't think he
really
wanted
interesting
to
to see Star Trek deal with
say, I want you stripped of power. He was trying to be diplomatic in his way of saying it.
I'm going to put you on trial is his diplomatic way of saying it.
I mean, it's saying that you will be legally examined. It's less, I think, abrupt than saying you'll be dethroned.
Yeah. Okay. I
mean, it's just another way of saying it, maybe, but
it's a diplomatic way of saying basically you will no longer be the figurehead of the Emerald Chain and your people.
I guess it just feels very not diplomatic to put her to say we're going to put you on trial.
That's
just
fair.
seems
like you can think that. I mean, it's your opinion. Let's talk about like the shit in apples though, because we haven't talked about that. But I really like that conversation because it's like. Yeah, like Starfleet, like, you know, we're going to make do with like what we have without committing atrocities and stuff. And
yeah, I think he was finally getting annoyed at her when that was like a little bit of the facade slipping where he's like, you're eating shit.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's showing that he can be hard too. And he can mess with her. And she does. She's like pulling food out of her mouth. That's definitely a point for him when you get the other guy.
It's kind of sad to hear him say like he's never ate a real apple.
Mouth.
Yeah,
because it's like even with like this green woman from another planet in the far-flung future, that's like such a common. Like everyone's ate an apple. Like, not the sad world.
What would Robert Picard say?
Oh,
I did find the whole exchange to be amazing, and my opinion of Admiral Vance like tripled in this episode and during these scenes specifically.
He's the good Merle. We've had so many bad Merles. He's the good Merle.
Yeah,
I still like him being a dad Merle too.
Why do people say that? Why do people call him Dad Merle? Like I don't.
Because he has
like
dad vibes. Like he just kind of
does
gives off this.
I don't know.
Vibe. Dad to the galaxy.
But
you know, there was we were doing our what we want to see in some season of Discovery. I think it was the second season, maybe
season 2. Yeah, but I know what you're going to say.
3, where we were saying
season
that
2.
I wanted to see you know, a Starfleet that wasn't compromised or was less compromised than they
non-sinister Starfleet is the way I believe you phrased it.
Yeah, and hey, it came through.
Yeah, finally. And the thing that we've talked about a lot that I think Brian has done a good job bringing up is that you can't make the Admiral be like the perfect good guy, because then he's just going to like help your heroes and they don't have like any struggle if they have like, oh yeah, look, our boss is going to take care of all of this for us. So the admirals in Star Trek are often kind of confrontational or sometimes even the villain, but a lot of times presented as obstacles or presented as like kind of like incompetent and unable to help. Here we can actually have like a strong, good, trustworthy, likable admiral, but because he is in command of a diminished fleet, he does not have the resources to solve the problems for our heroes. So I think it's really cool.
Odds with theirs.
Yeah, and they can't just call him up and ask him for advice because if all the captains were doing that, he'd never get anything done. So, you know. So yeah, I think they've done a very good job. He's now, I think he's my favorite good admiral in the entire history of Star Trek. I mean, Ross was kind of cool, but I mean, I guess you can go Admiral Kirk. Okay, I like Admiral Kirk better.
Admiral Janeway. Well, you're not going to pick Admiral Janeway.
No, I'm not going to pick Admiral Janeway. But but we don't see Admiral Kirk doing much admiraling, whereas Admiral Vance actually gets to admiral, and I think he does it better than any other admiral we've seen in Starfleet, as far as being a good guy admiral. You could say, oh well, I love this evil admiral, and that's a different type of category. But.
There's an interesting little buzz going on in the chat where Alexandra Sandu proposed that Kovich might be the president. I love all these Kovich. Who is Kovich?
Oh yeah, they mention
theories. Like it's
they
very
mention
cool.
a president. They keep mentioning like the Federation president. So I don't know. It might be a cool reveal that they're setting up.
Yeah, I did like.
Cool. It would be very Amidala and Queen Amidala and Padme, wouldn't it?
I did like that they mentioned and acknowledged there was a president, but then because sometimes Star Trek just makes it look like Starfleet runs everything in the Federation, and it was nice to acknowledge that there is a civilian government out there. Yeah. But we care about Admiral Vance. We don't care about this president we've never seen, so we're going to deal with the president.
Be some sort of final episode cliffhanger where it's like the reveal isn't that it's somebody we know from Discovery so far, but that it's somebody we will recognize from Trek history.
Or it'd be hard to do because it's
time
in the 32nd century.
It's going to be O'Brien.
O'Brien, William Shatner,
and it will set up something in basically the next season. Something that we will.
Or what if it's like a familiar alien race? Like what if it's like like a Ferengi is like the Federation president or something like that?
I hope that whale probe is the president.
If it was the Ferengi, I would almost.
Just the galaxy's largest phallus is the president.
Admiral Vance suddenly turns and goes.
And he's like standing up straight and like spinning around. Let's move on to the bridge crew and their captivity on the ship.
The president is a whale. Sorry. Yes, it's a cetacean. That would be amazing.
Cetacean ox, yeah, on lower decks. They're setting it up.
Giving y'all Morse code.
Dave is giving us Morse code. If you can see this, that's a good point, Dave. That's a very valid point to bring up. But yeah, we get Bryce and Reese sending Morse code to each other and kind of pissing off the guards. It's one of those scenes where like, okay, our heroes are in like a room full of heavies and they have to come up with something creative that isn't too trite to annoy audiences, but they have to like somehow like escape. So I thought what the show did here is like pretty cool, where they do like the trickery of pretending to do like some infighting, and then when the guards have their guard down, turn on them and knock them out because it's a movie or a TV show where you just like punch people on the head one time and they go to sleep. But yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, Reese and Bryce actually, do something, so that's always a plus. But then after they regain control of the ready room, Tilly says, "Barricade that door. We're going out of this back door on here." Ren, the Andorian, hacks the computers. He can scramble the sensors so that it looks like there's thousands of life signs on the ship, and they'll be able to move around undetected. Book tells Tilly, "I'm going to stay behind in the ready room, because they're gonna come in here to check on us, and me and Ren will make our stand because I think that's the best we can do to help Michael." So everyone else escapes, and Ren and Book make their stand in the ready room. What do y'all think about the stuff in the ready room?
I thought Tilly did a great job being captain. I had nothing. She did everything she needed to. She made hard choices. I was quite impressed with the way she took control of the situation in a place where things are much more amorphous, and it's not just, well, of course we do what she says because Saru told us to. It's much more of a, well, we're all locked in a room now kind of thing. And I thought she did a really good job at that. And I loved the whole tapping. What were you saying? What were you sending? I was telling him to keep tapping. I mean, and the way all of that unfolded, the way the whole team worked together to take him out. That whole thing was awesome. It was. And
Book was impressed by it, so he's continuing like his kind of like fanboyism of Starfleet.
Yeah,
because he's never seen Starfleet up close until he's met these people. So he's like, oh, this is like really cool.
Yeah, you got to see him do something that was actually a little kind of scoundrelly in its way. A little bit more like how he's had to operate at times. I think he, kind of figured, oh, these guys are not going to be so good once they're captive. And then they kind of came through, and instant they saw that the guard was down, they all kung fu'd the shit out of everybody.
Yeah.
Which was cool. Like I'm glad. Again, I like the bridge crew getting to kind of do their thing.
Yeah.
Although
I'm
sadly,
guessing.
well, go ahead.
Well, I'm guessing that the woman who plays Lieutenant Nilsson was unavailable when they shot these episodes because she's not here. But instead, they have like this new face in the bridge crew. So I'm thinking like it must have just like happened to be like her rotation in the bridge, and it sucks for her because she gets captured, and so like all the rest of the Discovery crew got to like go on the shuttles back to the Admiral. So it's like I was like, oh yeah, it's like kind of like Dante and Clerks. Like I wasn't even supposed to work today, type of thing. The other thing I have to comment on this stuff is I had noticed earlier this season in the ready room that there's like that back door by Saru's desk. And I was like, oh, I wonder where that goes. Because this room, like the front door that comes into it is the turbo lift. Like there's no like corridor connected to this. But they say there's like a maintenance shaft. So this is like some of that dotting the I's, crossing the T's. If you look at the... I'll pull up
I had always assumed that other door led to the bathroom, like it did in Picard's ready room, the toilet and all of that.
We really need more bathroom scenes in Star Trek to just lock it down.
But there could be an access tunnel or maintenance hatch in the bathroom. In fact, I think there we don't see that. No, it was Cisco's ready room has an access tunnel that leads directly into it.
I don't know if you can see
we
that.
should go for full screen here because we're still on slideshow mode. So you're tiny.
We should do a whole episode of just that schematic. By the way, maybe that's more Tex-Trek. I mean, Trek Yard's territory. But I have some thoughts about it.
All right,
For those people who are listening right now and not
look at that.
I'm going to cut this out of the podcast.
Has a book with some blueprints busted out of
can you
the.
see Pike's ready room?
Raise it up a bit. Raise it up a bit. Most of the thing is below the camera. There you go. Now we're looking at the ship, though, mostly the aft end of the ship.
It's like you have to actually go
better?
through
There
the
you go.
turbo
That's
lift
the
to get
saucer.
to.
Okay, can you
I
see
see. You have
Pike's
to go
ready
through
room?
the
It's like it's kind of behind the
Yeah.
bridge, but kind of like
Yeah.
up above it.
Okay, yellow kind of arch thing. Nope, no, raise up. Raise it up. There you go. Now we're looking at the bridge centerpiece. Yeah, I think I see
Pike's
it.
ready room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's where they are.
Okay.
But I
The
like
schematics are all Greek to me.
Yeah.
when I love that like in making this episode, like they took that into consideration about like how to escape from there.
So I thought Book and Ren staying behind to buy a minute or two of extra time was a horrible decision.
Well, it ended up poorly for Rin.
But I mean, but besides that, the best thing you can do is take away all the hostages from the bad guy so that they can't just say surrender or I'll blow this person's head off. By having them stay behind and potentially be recaptured as they were, they have given some more hostages to the bad guys. If you want to know something that will get Michael to surrender, it's a gun to Book's head. If Book is really worried about Michael, he'll make sure he doesn't get captured because
If he's smart enough to have thought of that, but he probably didn't think of that.
Yeah, so
He doesn't have that.
Did he think that they might be able to shoot their way out of it, like take out a small, crew, crew to take that were sent to recapture them, and then just move out to the corridor?
I can't believe I'm saying this because like I think it's weird to like frame Star Trek as a role playing game, but because I know that like that's like important to you, Brian. I'll say it to this is like, what if you had like two characters who felt confident they could like stay behind and help by fighting off these guards, and they choose to do that, and then only in retrospect do they realize it was a mistake. Perhaps Ren and Book are
I would have said set up an ambush somewhere where they're not expecting. Don't be right where their guns are going to be pointed. You hit them where they ain't, not where they're ready for you. Is I guess would be my response to that idea. If you want to go toe to toe and try to attack them, okay, but do it smart. Don't sit in front of the bullseye at the end of the firing range and do it.
I just think it's the most tragic thing what happens to Rin. I wish they had done more hackery stuff and that he was able to do some more computer.
Yeah, it hurt me too to see that.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that when we get to it. But what else you got, Brian, about this? Or was that it?
I mean, it was big and valiant, but I didn't. Like, I guess the way, if I'd wanted that to happen, I would have had the bad guys coming through the door as Tilly was leaving, so that they really do need, even 30 seconds will make all the difference in the world. So if that's the way they wanted this ending to go, they should have written it that way.
I agree with you. That would have been the better way to do it.
Yeah. And it could have been all dramatic. No, I would need you to come. No, I'm staying behind, bye.
Yeah.
No,
what could you no, like Michael needs you out there and you need me in here. Now go. Like that.
Yeah, that would have been.
We could have wrote this. They should let us give it a pass.
Get out of here, you tosser.
Anything else in the ready room, or should we move on?
Let's move on.
Let's move on. Carry on.
Okay. So this is another really good meaty part of the episode is the Irelia and Stamets. So let me just go over this real quick, and then we can talk about it. But yeah, Irelia takes Stamets out of the brain control crown and has a conversation with them. They talk about opera. They talk about their children, and they talk about Osyraa, and we kind of get to see Aurelio's morals, and he's also a complex character. Great to see Kenneth Mitchell back in action. And while they're having this conversation, they explain some of the science going on here about the spore drive can't be duplicated because of Stamets. He's the only one with the tardigrade DNA. And Stamets thinks it would kill him to extract the DNA to make more. Aurelio thinks that they have a safe way to do it. And Stamets really kind of questions Aurelio about the morals of Osyraa and how can you be behind this and stuff like that. And Aurelio tells his backstory about how he was a kid at 10 years old who was about to die from a genetic condition, things that parallel Kenneth Mitchell's real life medical conditions with Lou Gehrig's very closely, or obviously written for him. But yeah, and this is also kind of an attack on capitalism. Look at terrible shit when you don't give people access to healthcare. Hashtag force the vote. But so we get that backstory about why he is loyal to her and see things from his perspective. What do y'all think about the Aurelio and Stamets stuff?
If you go back to that first shot you showed, I just want to say that Kenneth Mitchell is a very handsome individual. The very first one with the red was very nice, but it was nice to see Kenneth Mitchell. I call him he and Noah Averbach-Katz have, I think, quickly become darlings in the Star Trek fandom or Star Trek community. They're very generous with their time with fans, and they're just they're both really amazing. Noah Averbach-Katz actually campaigns for another serious problem, which is for diabetes, for insulin. So I just love that both of these actors are in Star Trek, and they're both great as character actors. So I expect to see Noah come back. We'll talk about that more later, but I expect to see him come back in future seasons. But this was a nice gift, I think, to Kenneth Mitchell. I think this was a really beautiful thing to do for someone who's that important to the Star Trek community.
I was just going to add insulin being another thing where capitalism's the bad guy. To restrict that from the people who need it, unless they can pay the price, unless they can prove their use to society, is very Emerald Chain morals. And this episode frames that stuff as being bad.
Is Osyraa. In fact,
in my usual pitch for the ready room, Jonathan Frakes does a really good interview on this week's episode, and he talks somewhat at length about these sequences. And so there's some more some cool behind the scenes stuff about it. And he's obviously Frakes is I don't know, he really seems just like a warm, personable, smart guy all around who was very cognizant of the fact that this actor was talking about something, portraying a character who would be saying some very personal things to his real life, and that they were, really felt lucky to have gotten that.
And as a director who has often been referred to as very much an actor's director, I mean, he started off as an actor, he is able to consistently get these really good performances. There's more of this coming up in a little bit with Sonequa Martin Green and Anthony Rapp that was actually my favorite thing to watch in this entire episode. But yeah, even here, just this monologue of just these two men sitting in a room talking to each other was some of the most riveting stuff that I've seen.
Aurelio did this kind of cool thing where he was kind of not listening. He was just sort of moving on the conversation and not listening to what Stamets was saying at times. Yeah. clearly not wanting to hear some of what he was being forced.
He turns
to hear.
his back. He turns the wheelchair around and moves away.
I actually, it kind of, because of him and because of what they did with what do you call it? I can't say her name. The head of the Emerald Chain.
Osyraa.
Oh, Osyraa.
I actually was like, oh, you know what? I kind of want to read like a Star Trek book or something now that's like about, sort of the heyday of the two of them working together and, see them operating.
She calls him my old friend.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And also she's very protective of what he experiences. Like, she wants his reality to be that reality that he's talking to Stamets about. Like, hey, she's trying to liberate us from dilithium by bringing the sport. I mean, like, he's just like petitioning for her. And I thought another interesting thing is like Admiral Vance does not dispute that the Emerald Chain has the most the best science research out there, and that made me kind of sad that the Federation isn't known for the best science.
I was wondering, is that the first time we'd heard that? Had anything been mentioned
That's
of the
the
Emerald
first
Chain?
time we heard that. It was the very first time we heard that. But it was surprising to me, and that was very kind of interesting as well, even though they're using their science for nefarious purposes, obviously, because he didn't even know that the pesticide he created was being used to cause the extinction of another species, so I thought this was very interesting stuff.
I can totally see a Starfleet that doesn't have enough ships to save everyone they could and want to save, deprioritizing the science side of things.
What's that saying about our country, right? Like, there's so many good deep things there. We've been deprioritizing education here and science for a long time.
Yeah, but here they're doing it to save lives. So, that's a little different than, making rich people richer. That's a whole
This
other...
is true. Look at this.
Well, arguably, if the Emerald Chain is capitalism somewhat writ large, or then it's showing that it's not that capitalism cannot funnel or create great science, but there's a cost. And
you see like his defense of the Emerald Chain in a way that I think parallels a lot of like real world stuff. Like, I know like some of the most like patriotic people that I've ever met are like immigrants who've like immigrated to America, and like they're so thankful to America for like giving them an opportunity. But sometimes they kind of resist criticisms of like our country. Just saying this like as an American who's had this experience, a lot of times you'll meet like people who they're thankful to their society to the point to where they're dismissive of criticisms. They don't want to face that more nuanced situation of like, oh, actually, like this country does like a lot of harm, and even though it worked out good for me or my family, it's also like really hurt a bunch of other people, and things are more complicated. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of like here where it's like, yeah, like you were saved, good for you. You were going to die at 10 years old, and Osiris stopped that only because you were a smart guy and had like, some use to serve to her. And that's the only reason why you were saved. And this type of
something like she saw a spark in me or whatever. And I'm like, oh, that you can even hear, like, although he might not have been aware of it, that there was this sort of mercenary assessment of his usefulness. Perhaps.
Yeah.
Or maybe just a moment of pity too, but
and then that is why healthcare should not be commodified.
Yeah.
But,
I thought it was a really strong scene, and honestly, his willful obtuseness was, what felt completely realistic.
It's also interesting that Stamets says he's a fan of opera now, because that was the thing with like him and Hugh and the Castilian opera, and also the fact that like he refers to Adira as his kid. And part of that's really he was using that to get into Aurelio's head. He's like, "Oh, I see your Orion branding behind your ear. You must have an Orion partner and Orion children."
Well, that was a question I had.
I think he's admitting here that he sees Adira as his ward or his child, which is really interesting.
I do wonder how much of what Stamets says in this scene, these scenes, is entirely about saying the right thing to get under his skin and to get him and to basically sway him to his side. Is that why he doesn't go into the complexity of Adira, but just said she's my kid? I don't think he's necessarily outright lying, but he says, for example, that the Rippers are extinct. Has that been stated anywhere before this?
No, but that might be a conclusion they've drawn to if like they haven't like ran across any in centuries. Might be
Picard never met a Ripper. Cisco never met a Ripper. It doesn't seem
It
too
seems
surprising.
like they were already rare by the time of Discovery.
Yeah.
And it's lucky that Stamets got.
They clearly never watched that
thanks, that's
cartoon
nice.
Short Trek with the
Yeah.
was it Ephraim and Dot?
Yes.
Yeah.
See, because I was wondering if that was just a lie to keep them from following that lead up to get Spore Drive, because Stamets doesn't want these bad guys having Spore Drive, so he's going to give them some false information that sends them on the focuses them where he wants them focused. Or was it the truth? But it's a big truth that we've never heard in the show before, and he delivers it in kind of an iffy circumstance where it's hard to know if he's being completely honest. So
as far as like the Adira thing, like setting that up here was essential to making the dramatic scenes hit harder in what follows, because we've already had time to like, oh, he thinks of Adira as a kid. We're already like processing that. So then later when he's like, my whole life is in that nebula, like we're already like on board with it.
Yeah.
It was very well written. I think this is a very well written episode by Kenneth Lin. It's only like his second Star Trek episode. The other one he co-wrote. So like Kenneth Lin, props to you. I really enjoyed both the writing and the directing from Frakes. Both are top notch in this episode.
Good combination.
Agreed. As a side note, he mentions you'll probably have to kill me to get my DNA. I'm like, dude, you it's right there. You just take some blood or some stomach lining like they did in that Picard or that clone episode in season 2 of TNG, whatever. There's lots of ways they could get some of this DNA without killing you. You're being melodramatic.
It's complicated mycelial other dimensional stuff.
It's only the DNA in the heart of my brain. That's the only place that has tardigrade DNA. You have to cut into my brain.
We don't know how alien DNA works. We don't know how this alien DNA works.
I have a question, because I found one thing that was a little bit hard for me to believe as just like someone who's immersed themselves into the Star Trek like kind of world, if you will. He talks about the Discovery era technology as like the glory days or the
golden age of science.
The golden age of science. And I think that like, how can it be that 900 years before how could it be that before the burn there wasn't like a better golden age than the
should it not have been the 29th century when the relativity could beam 7 of 9 to any point of space and time, which is like a wave of the hand.
Was it Irelia who said that?
It was Irelia who said that. And I get it. He's like, I just don't think the Spore Drive is the most marvelous thing we've even seen in Star Trek. Like, it just seems like, maybe it is. Okay, I mean, that could be fair, but
I have a feeling that like history may not be the biggest, the most studied thing in the kind of the difficult times after the burn. And also
that's fair.
It seems clear that Irelia is being his focus is being a little bit directed probably by Osyraa, so that he may be getting a rather incomplete view of history.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we found like this really miraculous invention from like the Renaissance era, even though like the 1800s. In like the 1800s, they had like steamboats and shit, but like I could still see like, oh yeah, like the Renaissance, like this golden age of like science and discovery and all this stuff. So
there's a little bit of a mythology.
I see
he's mythologizing. How do you?
We invest it with a romance. The
he's
Renaissance.
He's
romanticizing.
talking about it. Yeah. Maybe he is talking about it in terms of like it because they knew so much less. There was a wilder sort of like spirit of science where they didn't think things were impossible as much as they do maybe in a time where they know more about how the universe works.
I'm not going to say it was intentional, but it does kind of work as a character thing, because we already know that this guy is willing to kind of be dishonest with himself and choose to look at things in like whatever framing is like the most peaceful or most comfortable for him, for his values, for his perspective. And so, maybe he is doing that the same way that he kind of romanticizes Osira and the Emerald Chain. Perhaps he does the same for the quote unquote golden age of science. But unless there's anything else, I'd like to move on to the ending stuff that wraps up the episode.
Right on.
But a few different moments here. One with Burnham and Stamets. She comes into engineering, knocks out all of the Emerald Chain guys, only stuns them, so Irelia is still around. Rescues Stamets. and Stamets is like, okay, I'm going to load up these spores. We're going to go rescue Hugh. We're going to go rescue Saru and Adira. And Burnham's like, no, what are you doing? I have to get you off the ship. And he is like, oh, come on. Like, like I have to go after them. Think about Adira if we lost Hugh. And that's when Burnham's like, no, Adira is there. And he's like, what? Adira is there? And he's begging with her. I really enjoyed watching these scenes. And she ends up having to Vulcan nerve pinch him, knock him out. And Sonequa Martin Green plays all of this. Like, it's so painful for her to do this to him. She puts him in this emergency force field capsule and sets her phaser to overload, blowing a hole in the hull to eject Stamets so that the HQ can rescue him. Meanwhile,
the phaser.
Meanwhile, Ren and Book fight off some regulators, but eventually are captured and brought to the bridge, where Osyraa asks Ren to, stop scrambling the sensors so that they can find the bridge crew. He refuses to help her. He stands up to her, and Book is like, hold on, like, don't kill Ren, spare him. I can tell you where this whole dilithium planet is. I'm the one who knows how to spore jump into the nebula and get to it. But Osyraa is so pissed off that she kills Ren anyways. Upsets Book, upsets Irelia, and she tells Irelia to get some truth serum ready for Booker. And then last but not least, the bridge crew knocks some more dudes out and get to the armory. They mount up with their weapons. Tilly says, grab as many weapons as you can. We got to take our bridge back. If someone falls, leave them behind. Keep going. We must do this. And then they're approached by, what could it be? Dot 23s playing Buster Keaton. And so, this is the sphere data. Zora is here to help. And that's the end of the episode. So what do y'all think about this ending stuff?
I guess it's more of only Michael gets to decide whether to weigh the balance between the good of the many and the good of the few. And anyone else who tries to do it, Michael, make sure that she gets her way.
I mean, Stamets basically accuses her of something. I think a lot of that sentiment was so powerful in a way, because in a way we all have been thinking these people followed Burnham. Ultimately it's Burnham. They put their faith in Burnham, and that she was right, and that Spock was right about the all sentient life thing, and that this was the only course of action. And so it must feel like the ultimate betrayal to Stamets when Burnham is totally not listening to him and his needs. He doesn't want to, I mean, the stakes make sense. He doesn't want to lose. He's already lost Hugh once before. There's no way you're going to get a second chance to resurrect someone from a death, right? That would
only
be
one resurrection.
Yeah, that would be really crazy.
Listen, people named Hugh don't get to live in Star Trek.
and I can tell you, it's so true. Oh my gosh. And very good. But then she's right though. The Federation's what's at stake, and that's more important than all of that. You know what I mean? Ultimately,
well, this is the end of City on the Edge of Forever. Somebody's got to make a choice as to whether Edith Keeler lives or dies.
Yeah.
It's just that earlier in this series we've seen Michael quite happily throw away the good of the many to take care of the good of the few. And here she's deciding that, no, here the good of the many is more important than the good of the few. And I was like, nobody else is allowed to make that decision in this show. Well, even when Saru tries to, Michael overrides him and says, no, this is what we're going to do.
It's a very
the asset of being the lead character.
Not only that, I think also I have something to throw in that maybe would make sense. She was raised on Vulcan. It's a very Vulcan trait to do that. Vulcans are always inserting the good of the many.
They're very pragmatic.
They're very, but they're also always high and superior over humans and others.
The original script of City on the Edge of Forever had it that Spock had to.
I'm not so much complaining, because it's very consistent that she just sort of takes charge and makes sure that what she thinks should happen.
That is her flaw, her fatal flaw for sure.
But she's going to take charge of the ship and become captain next week.
Yeah. Well,
I do have.
They might as well, just because she's going to do whatever she's going to do anyway. You might as well.
Looking more likely. Yeah, looking more likely.
I got goosebumps. I got goosebumps at Dom Paris's follow-up earlier to the Klabauterman, because. He says they are now appearing. Zora's now appearing as the little, the robots, and it's so Zorabi and Klabauterman, they are now appearing as this creature of diminutive size with tools. Klabauterman usually appear as small sailors carrying a hammer. So very, very cool.
Oh, nice.
You need to write a thesis. It's good stuff.
Yeah, that's a very, very cool, very smart observations, Dom. Thank you for hanging out and sharing that with us tonight.
Yeah. Can I also toot his horn and say that he was the very first person I heard about the Guardian of Forever idea from, and it happened. So that was pretty cool.
Nice.
The moment when Stamets is like crying and like Culber has like her hands on him, like trying to like get him like come to his senses, or at least like come to like a agreement with her of why she's not going to let him do this. I don't know if this was Jonathan Frakes' idea or what, but from her bloody thigh, she has like blood on her hand. When Stamets is like begging her and like telling her like no, like I have to go save them, like don't let them die. And so you kind of it kind of symbolizes that guilt that she's feeling, because the whole time Sonequa Martin Green plays this is like it's as painful for her as it is for Stamets to go through this.
Yeah, I really liked the way that when Vulcan nerve pinches him and he kind of collapses and he has that sort of almost corpse-like face, and she takes him into her arms like catching him, but it kind of becomes this almost maternal embrace as she's clearly feeling all the guilt of the moment.
Yeah, it was very well done, and very emotional. And I do wonder. I mean, I think we already know most of these actors are coming that are stuck in that nebula are coming back next season, right? So they're not actually going to die. But
right.
How long will it take Stamets to forgive Michael for this? I wonder.
And I'm also on the edge of my seat because I need to know how I know that they're going to be safe, but I need to know how. I need to see them. I need to figure out how they're being rescued. The fact that we don't see the Verubin Nebula stuff this entire episode, I think that was a brilliant choice, because it makes me so nervous. I'm so concerned about them because I'm not seeing what's going on. So are they just like in hideous pain, having like their
that's
away, or what?
That's a Tarantino move to set up somebody in a very dangerous situation and then have the camera just like leave them for a few minutes while something terrible is occurring. Yeah. Ving Rhames in Pulp Fiction being the ultimate example, but there's
Inglourious Bastards. Yeah, the Inglourious Bastards does it brilliantly in the first 5 minutes. And also like getting to see the actors like dial it up to 11, like the death of your family. Yeah, that's a thing where you just like throw nuance out the window. Like you're screaming, you're crying, like creating the situation where like the drama can just like go to like the highest peak. Was very rewarding. I love stuff like this.
Stamets has done the math in his head, and he feels like there's time. Like he thinks they can jump there.
Is he being honest though?
No, I know it won't. I agree with you, but that's what I'm saying. Like he's so convinced, and I love that he's fighting so hard for this. And it's exactly what I would do if my significant other were there. I wouldn't have any care about like what actually was going on. I'd try to make sense of it in a way that that helped me to get my goal. So it's a genius job of the writing and also the performance as well. Oh, look, we get a shot of like all the discs floating around.
I did like the mechanics of the rescue as well from just a technical nuts and bolts plot level. I really like we can't use the airlock, so I'm just going to blow out a window and we're going to put this little emergency escape pod.
It feels like they put a lot of thought into the writing on this one.
Yes.
And Discovery doesn't always feel that way. So it's a joy to see.
Yeah.
Father,
what were you saying, Dave?
The largeness of the really extreme emotions here, and Frakes told a cool story about that on the Ready Room, where he said that he had them go very large with it initially, and then do subsequent takes where they reined in like what had been even bigger, sort of more dramatic performances, but that in doing it that way and he said you basically can't go the other way. You can't start small and make it big. You have to start big and make it small. And that there was still like elements of that really extreme performances that informed their portrayals. So you got these like really dramatic scenes with like that were on the cusp of like breakdowns and stuff. Anyway, it was just one of those things where I was like, oh wow, there's so much going on that I don't always think of as far as what directors do to bring out the actors in a scene, and it was just really cool to hear that behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed hearing that too. Anything else on Book or Stamets?
Yeah, I did have
Burnham or Stamets.
Yeah, the Stamets gets sucked out the window, and then the camera does that close up on Michael's face, and my immediate thought was, dude, you just blew up a phaser. All the bad guys are coming right here. I literally quoted our favorite Christopher Lloyd Klingon and said, get out of there. And then this gun sticks in her head, and I was like, you dummy. But I get it. She's stressed out. She thinks she's.
I was going to say, yeah, we the viewers are always a little detached, and these characters that are in the midst of all this emotion and angst and adrenaline. Yeah. I don't think you're operating at 100% mentally.
Yeah, no, it's very different. I'm sure I'd be a gibbering wreck in that situation.
But I do like the idea, by the way, of like Christopher Lloyd, kind of like Statler and Waldorf and the Muppets, kind of heckling.
Oh yeah, he's like watching on the balcony.
Yeah, style.
Everything needs to have like a Christopher Lloyd commentary over it now.
Oh my god.
What do y'all think about the death of Rin, and now Osiris is coming for the dilithium planet?
It's a big plot element. I don't know how much time they're going to have to develop it in the last 50 minutes they've gotten this season. So, given that they have other things to resolve, is she really going to have time to do more than just kind of express an interest in it? Especially without Stamets, because it's going to take her. She's got to fly back through either take a small ship through the crazy subspace tunnel, or take a big ship and do the usual warp thing. Maybe she can take the big ship through the tunnel.
Well, the Viridian was able to go through the dangerous Transwarp corridor because that's how she got to the nebula last week.
Yeah,
I want to see how the Viridian got through all that debris.
Yeah,
I just that's some impressive crap right there.
I wanted Rin to stay on with the crew somehow and survive. But I thought that it was a reasonable upping of the dramatic stakes that was important for Aurelia's, or is that his name? For his character to see.
They're setting up Aurelia's redemption or his betrayal, I guess, of Osyraa, and also I like that Ren saved Book's life.
Yeah,
a few episodes ago.
Well, yeah.
And so here, Book is I'm going to return the favor and save him, but it's you don't get to save him. And David Ajala plays that the tragedy of that so well. It's gut wrenching to watch.
They had such a what disheartens me about this is not just the fact that the performer is great and all the fun behind it and everything like that, but they had that buddy film vibe going on where it was I could start to see Book and Rin on adventures, right? Going off on side adventures and having.
I would have liked to have seen that too, but
yeah, it would have been really nice. And then I know this is cheesy, but because they're married in real life, I would have liked it if Rin and Tilly got together and had a romance. And I had all these hopes for the character,
or at least got stuck in a turbo lift together for
or something.
Minutes,
yeah,
they had that moment together. They had that moment together a few episodes ago, and that was enough for me.
I had so many hopes.
Have chemistry. These two actors.
I had so many hopes for this character, and so this one hurt the most. They killed Cal, who was cool. This season, they've had a few of well, that's it, right? Is that the only other kind of character that's interesting? I thought for myself, but then Rin came along, and I was all about Rin. I loved Rin. So now my new hashtag is revenge for Rin. So just in case you guys want to use the same hashtag, feel free to use
I'll get on board that.
Thank you.
They are just not going to let an Andorian into the cast, are they?
They all wanted Strand to become a regular on Enterprise, and that never happened. So
that's true.
I have this horrible feeling that the reason he had no antenna was because people thought they looked silly, so they had them amputated so they wouldn't have him a silly-looking character on their show. Now I have this deep, dark suspicion that that's what was going on with that, is they wanted to make him look less silly, which annoys annoys me because I'd like to see Andorians more
Yeah,
often.
they don't look silly in Enterprise. They look pretty rad with the animatronics and all that stuff. You know, I thought they did a good job.
Yeah.
But it is sad that he never even got to grow them back. He didn't last long enough.
Yeah.
Well, Zara didn't get to grow his hand back from the parasitic frostbite. So what are you gonna do?
PJ
I like
made
that
a
it
good point
sounded
about
like
that.
you're like looking out for him, Father. Like you're.
They should at least have prosthetics like
We
a
don't
weak
know how
hand,
parasitic
right? Like,
ice works. Like, I think that's kind of a weird thing to be critical of. Like, maybe you can't regenerate from that. Like,
My-
it was like
my
a really
assumption
dangerous alien thing.
Is that
Like-
the hand had died and then he was injected with nanotech that is slowly rebuilding the hand, and he just has to wait a few days and it will be fully functional again with the super 32nd century
months.
nanotech.
It reminds me of
nanites.
it reminds me of last week when people were complaining about like, oh, so you just like touch the Discovery, you like another ship just touches it and it can spore jump too, and I'm like, no, why do you think, like, smart people that I like that talk about Star Trek would say that? I'm like, no, why would you assume that? Like, I'm sure there was complications that went along with that. And then this episode a week later confirms it, where they're like, oh, the Viridian spore jumped in with the Discovery. Osyraa must have found a way to compromise the, mycelial interface or whatever they techno-ballot. But yeah, like, she has science people who work on this type of stuff.
Yeah.
But anything on the .23s before we finish the episode and go into the Gornags?
I have been wanting sphere data to do some kick-ass stuff, and I've loved what the little things I've seen of it. So I'm glad we're going to get some more sphere data, being big and doing stuff. I'm excited about that. I love the idea of that.
They said
the
stuff 2 years ago,
Clobauderman
right?
stuff. Yeah.
When did
Clobauderman
Calypso
stuff
come out? That was 2018.
Was that the first appearance of the .7s?
No, the
Zora. You're saying Zora. Okay, gotcha, Zora.
So they've set it up a long time ago, so it's just now coming to fruition.
Father, do you mind throwing up Dom Paris's post about the .23s?
Sure.
They're
Dom
my children,
says,
and I love them.
Dom,
keep going. You above that. There we go. I just wanted to get a kid-friendly voice about him.
I do like.
That old trope in Bond movies from the old days, where like at the end all the agents would rappel down from the ceiling for a big battle with all the Spectre agents. Mm-hmm. And it's just not going to be as cool if it's like essentially a bunch of cute robots doing it. But I'll be happy for Dom's kids.
Honestly, it could be, as somebody who loves Doctor Who, seeing a bunch of cute robots do it could be amazing. But
I do think they remind me of the Batteries Not Included Aliens.
I loved that movie as a kid. Yeah, I really loved
such a good movie. I know you'll talk about it in the Gornags probably, but I love the division colors on their eyes. That was cool, and I like that the Zora intelligence has like nested itself into these dots.
And I'm not sure if it counts as like the Vulcan hand jive, but they're kind of doing it, even though it looks like their hands are only 3 digits, so that might just be them waving.
Yeah.
For all I know. I'm sure like the animators, or either the animators or the design people probably thought about, if we give it a 3-digit hand, it'll do the Vulcan hand jive. Or no, and Ephraim and Dot. This is actually a Gornag I forgot about. Ephraim and Dot does the hand jive to the tardigrade.
Oh, right on.
Remember?
Yeah.
That dumb little cartoon. But yeah, I don't think we have much to really comment on like what their application will be. That's just kind of a cliffhanger for the finale next week. If there's nothing else, I'll just go ahead and run through the Gornags.
Let's do it.
Okay, well, starting off from the top, these are just all of the continuity connections, Easter eggs, and in-jokes that I found within the episode. If I miss any, be sure to let me know. But starting off, the woman regulator that we see working for Osyraa and Zara is actually the same species that we saw in Children of Mars. Kima, the little girl that her mom worked on Mars, and they would wiggle their tongues to each other, and like the very weird sequence in Children of Mars, or at least weird to me. But yeah, that's the same species. We don't have a name for that species yet. On the Orion computers, there is Orion script. We've first seen Orion written language way back in Star Trek Enterprise in the episode Borderland. Admiral Vance refers to Osira's trap as they lured us in like a Altarian spider. The Altarian thing has been mentioned a lot in Star Trek, but it originally came from the episode Amok Time when Altar 4 was the destination of the Enterprise, and Chekhov has the funny sequence with Sule where he talks about like we're going to Altar 4 and then we're going to Vulcan, then we're going back to Altar 4 and then we're going to Vulcan. Like the captain won't make up his mind. It's a very like Lower Decks kind of a moment from early in Star Trek. The ship that they have a hard time getting around in the Transwarp corridor is a Wanderer class ship, which is a very, very deep cut. But the Wanderer class actually comes from the FASA role-playing game, and it was kind of canonified back in early Next Generation. Mike Okuda took it and put it on a view screen in TNG. But the Wanderer class in the game, I think it was actually an Orion ship.
Yeah. No, it is an Orion ship. I've used them in my games. It was years and years ago, but yes.
That's nuts.
Look at that.
That is a deep cut. Wow. Nice.
Book also mentions that this tactic of getting into Starfleet HQ is similar to something that Osyraa had done at Benthos 4. In the Star Trek Voyager episode Vis-a-Vis, that's the one where there's like that alien who keeps like hopping from body to body and he eventually like takes over Tom Paris's body. But when he first shows up as Steth, the character Steth at the beginning of that episode.
That's right.
So he's from the fourth planet of the Benthos system.
Nice, Fathery.
And of course, having Kenneth Mitchell back on Star Trek Discovery, he has played 3 characters previously in Discovery: the Klingon Kol, the Klingon Kol Shaw, and the Klingon Tanavik. And I should mention that he was also played 3 characters in Star Trek Lower Decks. So in just
how'd you find the same angle for those 3 characters?
Yeah, it's like a perfect.
Yeah, that's like nuts.
I didn't make that image. I swiped it.
It's like crazy.
But yeah, he also played 3 characters in Lower Decks this year too. So he's actually played 7 characters in Star Trek in a very short period of time, just since 2017. The phaser being set to overload, that's an old trick that was first set up in Star Trek in the episode The Conscience of the King, when someone tries to assassinate Captain Kirk with a phaser hidden in his quarters set to overload.
It makes that awful but awesome noise.
Yeah, that was fun.
Can I just say, sorry. The thing about the phaser real quick, that there's in the Ready Room, there's a cool sequence where they talk about the props, and it was fun to find out the nickname for that phaser was the Great White Shark.
Oh yeah, because in Star Trek Nemesis they have the dolphin, so now we have the Great White Shark. Yeah. It's a little bit meaner. The .23s at the end of the episode that are under control of the sphere data are speaking in the voice of actress Annabelle Wallace. This is the second time we've heard her this season, and that is who played Zora back in the Short Treks episode Calypso.
Our funny face. Hello.
The final Gornegg is a reference to the title of this episode. There is a tide. ... Yes, that's from it's from the Shakespeare play of Julius Caesar. That's actually from a conversation between Brutus and Cassius after they've killed Caesar. They're talking about I don't know if I should like read the whole quote, but Dave is a big Shakespeare guy, so correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, they're basically talking about we at the height are ready to decline. There is a tide in the affairs of men, which taken at the flood leads on to fortune. Omitted all the voyage of their life is bound and shallow and in misery. Basically saying like there is a tide in like society and like the doings and happenings of people. And you can either learn to ride it and have success where it carries you, or if you don't, then you will drown in the tide and know nothing but misery, is basically what they're saying.
Or you can live in Ohio.
and be landlocked in Ohio.
Yeah, no, that is correct, Father. That is the gist of it. Is that it is about taking advantage of an opportunity seizing the moment when it's right. And I at least my assumption was that it was referring very specifically to sort of Vance's opportunity. Arguably it could be applied to other things, but the thing that was being dangled piece with the emerald chain seemed like the biggest.
The original title for this episode that leaked a while ago was "The Good of the People," and we can kind of see how that would have been an appropriate title as well. But they changed it on us.
Yeah, we find out that Hope Is You Part 2 will come sooner than we thought. I was speculating it would come.
So we're actually getting the That Hope Is You Part 2 next week. So we'll be here 7:30 p.m. Central Friday to discuss that and conclude our coverage of Star Trek Discovery Season 2. In the meantime, though, there's more going on tonight in about 30 minutes over on Starfleet Boys channel. Yeah, you want to tell us about that?
It's just a New Year extravaganza. We'll talk about 2020, our favorite things, our least favorite things, like that kind of, just a reflective kind of show tonight. I don't know what to call it yet. Maybe y'all can help me come up with a name, but I just want to say thanks for having me this season and Happy New Year to you guys. This has been like a real joy and I look forward to it every week.
Yeah, I do too.
It's been great having you.
Yeah,
I don't get a ton of social interactions lately, so strangely, because of all of the online activity, I've actually had like an easier time being more social more often in 2020, and I almost fear like post-pandemic when I'm gonna be like, I just can't find time to hang out with people and have to deal with all of that fear of missing out and frustration again. But that's a problem that I'll gladly accept to move past this shit that we've all had enough of. But
here.
But yeah, so everyone hop on over to Starfleet Boys channel and check that out, and also come back next week. In the meantime, though, Happy New Year's, everybody, and live long and prosper, y'all.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek, and follow Fathery on Twitter at TXTrek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you and take care.